Apparently this is the way it works in the NBA. If you're a favorite and you just don't blow out a really talented underdog team, you're no good. You're just terrible. We tend to forget that the Heatles, LeBron was the best player in the world. Bosh was a top 10 player in the league, and D. Wade was still very, very good on his good nights. In their first title, they trailed 3 different playoff series. The Clippers are now tied after 4 games, and the world's ending. Are you guys, y'all just start watching the NBA? These first-round playoff series can get really tough all the time for great teams. Let's make some assumptions here. We assumed coming into the playoffs that when the Clippers are fully healthy, they're real good. They were 12-1 this year when fully stacked. Well, Patrick Beverley hasn't played the last 3 games. Kawhi is still great. That assumption was great. They were good in close games. That's been the story all year. And when they're healthy, they're good. They're not right now perfectly healthy. Patrick Beverley gives them 26 minutes a night. He's not healthy. But most of the assumptions are true. The assumptions for the Dallas Mavericks are great coach, terrific young player, not very good in close games, all offense, no defense, and would be interesting to watch with no playoff experience. Those are all true except one exception. Let's explain the whole series. Luka hit a 30-footer at the buzzer. If he doesn't, it's 3-1 Clippers. And they're going to close the series out without Patrick Beverley playing and Paul George playing as bad as I've ever seen him. And they'd still lead 3-1. That's the series, a shot. Everything we assumed is true. I mean, the reality is first-round playoff series are tough. Remember the 2008 Celtics? That's one of the last great teams. They had a great year. They won 67 games. They won a title. They were pushed to 7 games by the Atlanta Hawks in the first round. The Hawks were an 8 seed. They had Kevin Garnett, Ray Allen, Paul Pierce, Rajon Rondo, potentially 4 Hall of Famers, Doc Rivers, one of the best singular year teams we've had in the last 20 years. Pushed to 7 by the Hawks. By the way, they had another series that year in the playoffs, went to 7 games. The Heatles, last year the Raptors, trailed in 3 different series. 3! And they won. This stuff's not easy. I mean, LeBron against the East in the first round has historically been a sweep. But the East has been garbage at the bottom. It's been Washington's and Detroit's and Orlando's. You're not sweeping people generally in the first round of the West. The West is better. And there's also 2 factors that we have to acknowledge here. There's no home court advantage. It's a bubble. So these games, you'd have started out first 2 games in L.A. It's not the way it works. So it's an advantage for the underdog team where there's no home court advantage, and Luka hit a 30-footer. Clippers are the better team. Clippers are going to win the series. But there's what assumption here has not, we knew the Clippers were very good when they're fully healthy. They're not. Patrick Beverley hasn't played in 3 games. We know Kawhi is still the best get a basket, get a stop guy in the NBA. I still think he is. LeBron may be more valuable. I think Kawhi get a bucket or get a stop's better. Hall of Fame head coach, great bench. Lou Williams had 36 last night. What of that is a surprise? What for Dallas is a surprise? We knew they could score. We knew they were great offensively. We knew Rick Carlisle was smart. We knew they had a bunch of shooters. We knew they didn't play any defense. They still don't. And we knew Luka was good, really good. But, I mean, there's no big shocks here. Paul George is really playing poorly. Paul George will be fine. Paul George, here's my promise. He'll play really well one of the next 2 games. He'll look like an all-star. But this idea that everybody just runs through the playoffs. Raptors trailed in 3 of their series last year. The Celtics went 8 games with the 8th-seeded Atlanta Hawks. The Heatles struggled off. I mean, if you go to the Miami Heat games, first year they lost the title. Second year they were wonderful. Third year they were lucky to win it. Ray Allen shot. And 4th year they got whacked. This is hard for the great teams. We look at the war. Maybe it's because we're coming off the Warriors dynasty where we just think that this is the way it is. They got one team has all the good players. And do you remember the Warriors lost last year in the final? And the year before, Houston led them. And then Chris Paul got hurt. Remember that? The first year for Golden State, they flew through it. Everything after that was a struggle. Last year, didn't the Warriors with KD, Steph, and Clay last year struggle in the first round against the Clippers? They go like 6 games. This stuff's hard. This is the West. Luka's great. Carlisle's smart. Owner Cuban. This is a real good team. So, we're freaking out. I mean, I just thought, sometimes stuff happens. Luka hits a 30-footer. Here's Doc Rivers.
Honestly, I thought we were very emotionally weak tonight.
Why do you think that is?
If I knew that, I would be Sigmund Freud. But at the end of the day, we're up 20 and we're getting technical fouls. Things like that just give the team juice. We just throughout. And I've been saying this for 3 games now. We're so much better than what we're playing.
They'll figure it out. They'll win the series. They'll be okay. The assumptions are right. But these first-round Western Series and sometimes first couple of rounds Eastern Series have never been easy for the favorites. It's a lot of work. It was work for the Warriors after their first year with KD, Steph, and Clay. They couldn't stay healthy. They infighting. It's tough. It's always been tough. My buddy Doug Gottlieb, brought to you by Mercedes-Benz, the best or nothing, joining us on a Monday. So, okay, listen, we both live in L.A. It's a Laker town, but this was going to be the Clippers season. My takeaway is when the Clippers are healthy, they're good. They're not totally healthy. And Luka's unbelievable and hit a 30-footer at the buzzer, or it's 3-1. I'm not freaking out, but should Clipper fans think this is not good at all and we're in real danger here? Is that fair?
Yes, I think you should. I mean, keep in mind, Colin, Kristaps Porzingis did not play. So if all these things were true and that was the best the Mavericks could do, okay, it's a once-in-a-lifetime game, considering the trash talk from Montrezl Harrell the game before and how Luka shut him up in Game 4. But if we look honestly at this series, and I would agree with you, the Clippers are the better team, and their defense, the metrics tell you they should be dominant over the Mavericks. The fact is that Game 1, had Porzingis not gotten thrown out, we don't know what the conclusion would have been, but you would assume it would have been nip and tuck. And then without him, Luka almost single-handedly, with some help from friends like Trey Burke, ends up taking down the Clippers. And then you listen to Doc afterwards, and he's like, we should be better than this. Playoff Paul George has been the ultimate ironic nickname because he's no-showed in several of these games.
Yeah, he's been bad.
Yeah, there's something there. And for a franchise that's never been past the second round, and for a group that outside of Kawhi Leonard, where is the kind of championship pedigree? It doesn't exist. It's different when you're the hunter as opposed to the hunted. And I think all of these things should make you very concerned if you're a Clippers fan. Does that mean they're going to lose? No. But this is likely going to be a 7-game series, and that wears you out and tires you out, and they haven't fixed the chemistry issues that don't have them performing at their optimum level.
Well, Paul George may be struggling. I thought Anthony Davis was sensational the other night, and he was really good in the fourth quarter. It's amazing, Doug. You start looking at all the number twos. Westbrook is hurt. Paul George has been bad. Porzingis is hurt. Middleton's been awful. I thought Anthony Davis the other night was sensational, and I thought he was the thing. Portland just had no answer for him. So when you watch the Lakers, if they give us what they give us the other night, which is defense, AD, and LeBron, what is the end game? Like how? Because
that's how they're designed. You hear so many people. And we'll fall into this trap. Like, why don't you play J.R. Smith? Or why don't you play, why don't you go out and get shooters? Like, look, it is not a perfect basketball team. It's not. They were not given a blank canvas. But in reality, even though the selections were bad by Magic Johnson, the guys that he picked, his idea of how they could compete, how they could win, is how the Lakers are winning. You got LeBron. He can score 25 a night. You got AD. He should score 25 to 30 a night. And then if you can get 20 out of Kuzma, like there's your offense. You just get enough offense from the rest of the team, and then you become the best defensive team in the playoffs. And that's how they're winning. We may want them to reconstruct themselves on the fly and throw out shooter here and shooter there. And maybe for a possession, out of a timeout, you can do that. But this is how they were designed. And by the way, this is why I think both you and I thought this would not be a great series. Portland's on fumes. They have no good matchup for LeBron. They have no good matchup for Anthony Davis. And while Damian Lillard has at times been absolutely spectacular in the playoffs, he's a non-defensive player who has been at times marginalized by the Lakers' overall team defense. So while people want the Lakers to be something they're not, this is who they are.
Yeah.
They're going to hold you to fewer points than you're comfortable with. And at the end of the day, they have LeBron, you don't. And as you pointed out, if Anthony Davis is their number 2, and I'm good with that, he's better than any other number 2 right now going. Now, LeBron may not be optimum number 1, top level, top 5 in the game LeBron, but when you factor in the two of them together and how this team is constructed, if they're going to win an NBA title, this is how.
I'm Brett Brown isn't perfect, and Jason Richardson came out and said he doesn't hold guys accountable. But I said, listen, man, this league is rough on coaches. Is that if you don't get along with your star, you're out. There is no Belichick. You can't call out your star player every day at practice. It doesn't work that way. So I always kind of defend the coach who gets ripped for, he's soft on players. Well, you better get along with your best players or you're done. So who is accountable for what has been an underachieving mess the last 2 years in Philadelphia?
Well, there's a lot that goes into it, and if we're honest about Philadelphia, you had one GM start the process, then Brian Colangelo comes in and tries to fix the process, and then he gets fired for social media nonsense and other things that are done. And then you hire Elton Brand, who's completely in over his head, not in terms of he doesn't know basketball, but this is a very complex thing he took over. So it's like hiring your third contractor to do a job where some other contractor kind of laid the foundation and had all the plans and I don't really agree with that. Meanwhile, they kept Brett Brown, Brett Brown was a developmental coach. He wasn't brought in to be a playoff coach. Those are two, it's the same job, but it's a completely different job, right? Coaching the Sixers now is totally different than when he took over in the first 3 years, where they were just trying to develop guys, find out who could play, find out who couldn't play, keep everybody up, keep everybody happy, and keep it moving. Now it's different. And he hasn't held people accountable. Most notably, Ben Simmons hasn't been held accountable in terms of, does he keep himself in optimal shape, and will he shoot the basketball? Like he should have, if Ben Simmons turned down open jump shots, take him out of the game. It's the only way to get him to shoot. But he had a relationship with Ben Simmons going back to when he was just a baby because he coached his dad in Australia, right? So there's a lot of ties there. So I don't solely blame Brett Brown, but I do think he's in over his head, in for a job that he wasn't hired for. And by the way, he's coaching for a group who didn't hire him. So you know what's coming later today is he's going to be fired. It's not solely his fault, though. This is more a fault of all these different voices coming in. We should do this. We should do that. We should do this. We should do that. Let's go out and get Al Horford, who fits you in terms of being a great culture guy. But where does he fit on the floor? Like, that signing is terrible considering what they actually need. I think it's a very complex tale, but if you think it's because the process doesn't work, that tanking doesn't work, I give you the Houston Astros, the San Diego Padres, the Boston Celtics, the Milwaukee Bucks, and yes, the Philadelphia 76ers, who are out of the playoffs. They got swept, but they still have Embiid, they still have Simmons, and though they missed on Jahlil Okafor and Markelle Fultz, they still have assets and are a playoff team, and they can use one of those assets to get more players and better players that fit whichever one of the two stars they keep.